My name is Emmanuel Ure. I am a Pelham from Central Liberia.
Emmanuel and his family live in the center of Liberia's capital, Monrovia, but he is developing this plot on the outskirts of the city with a view to a more secure future.
In Liberia, both our culture and our livelihood, everything is pretty much tied to land. So when I decided to get a little bit of money and I have children, I decided to buy land. My hope and dream is to be able to develop this property, but as long as I don't have something like a house or a tree planted on it, somebody else will buy it. I simply say it's a vacant land. So this is why today I brought my children and my wife for us to plant coconut trees. That's what my children are here to do. Will you be happy living here? You think so?
Yeah, I'd really be happy.
I know you are a city girl, but you're married, country boys.
You know, we'll not be like in a village. We'll have other people around. So.
No, maybe when people move here, I'll move somewhere far up and buy another land. So I won't be in village. So I have a deed that is prohibited and copies at the National Archive. It's supposed to be a guarantee, but that is not the reality on the ground. So even though I have the deed, I don't feel very secure.
In Liberia, there are different systems of land ownership, customary and statutory. To understand this, we have to return to the founding of Liberia. People from various parts of Africa settled Liberia. They came for different reasons. Some came because of fertile land, some came because of drought, some came for power, some came for the sea. They had heard of the sea, but they had not seen the ocean, an endless body of water.
Come and go to that land.
Meanwhile, across the ocean, free blacks sponsored by the American Colonization Society journeyed to the west coast of Africa to settle and establish new homes. Some would become Liberia's ruling elite.
Right here at this island, it's called the Providence Island. This is the first piece of land that was negotiated between the Africans, the indigenous Africans that were here, and the African Americans that came from the U.S. This is the exact spot.
Before their arrival in 1822, this country was already populated by the 16 ethnic groups that are here today. Traditionally, land is owned in common in Liberia. It belongs to the living in our tradition. It belongs to those who are already dead. It belongs to those who are yet to be born. So it does not belong to one person. The chief was a custodian. He and his councilmen apportioned the land. Then came in the Americans, or the American Colonization Society, those who founded Liberia. They came and they approached the leadership. They say, these are your own descendants that we took to America so many years ago. We want them to come back and we want to buy a place for them to settle. The word buy is not, or was not at that time in our vocabulary. So as far as our ancestors were concerned, they were leasing the land to the Americans, perhaps for an indefinite period of time.
When the settlers first came, the kings at the time allowed them to settle here to use this piece of property. And after that, they left to go to the mainland across the river. The American Liberians settling here tried to bring everyone together and then declare independence. And that's the time, 1847, the world began to know that there is a country called the Republic of Liberia.
As time went on, the settlers began to alienate the indigenous people. They said, no, this land is ours. It's no longer yours. That was the beginning of the land conflict.
The whole question of land and how land impacts upon Liberians of all walks of life is profound from the very beginning of the Republic. So you had a traditional system that existed before the statutory systems or the Western systems were imposed, with different norms and different practices, with different regulations and different philosophy of ownership and transfer and use.
Customarily, I do have another land that is in Gumu. That's the village I was born. Our father and his brothers, they own a piece of property there. I am told by our father that his father, that is our grandfather, they settled here long time.
No.
They came from Guinea and they moved here and settled here, and he befriended some warriors that were in this area, and that's how he got his property. Today, we consider this place to be our land. We know the boundaries by the old folk pipes, by the mountain, by the creek, by the soap trees. We know the boundary. This creek, the name of this creek is Gokbaye. It means where the water dries. Places like these, in terms of traditional, customary land ownership, the history of naming of creeks is tied to the landscape and it shows ownership. So if we're trying to establish land ownership, if somebody came to Gumu and say, this is my land, well, they need to know this story and they need to know it properly to be able to tell the story. Because the name of this creek is tied to the people of Gumu through the warriors that fought to claim this land way, way, way back. So this is the creek. So this is part of Gumu land, and this creek falls within our land.
These stories are passed down the generations. Male elders manage the community's rights to the land.
According to our father, the land should be passed over to the male children because they are also still going to marry and go on their husband's property.
Udon hang lago. Jinadi de daga wapejo. Mane niadi daga bay. The way the other cononga, the poor got a cadian. Daba.
The hear you?
Oh, then I'm not a young and Gani daga ngay road. Well, Kahawa Kayamudula did a gay. Yenda Jine. Dinaga Manuda weather. Baba get young Aina. Abana, our Yangela, lower go. No, look, I hung you.
The way we're using the land in the past and up to present is each family member just go and clear a full bush and make a farm.
Once the men clear the land, cash crops are planted alongside subsistence crops, providing a way to earn money and produce food to feed the community.
Oma Nyama brought me up. Oma Nyama was making pineapple farm, and I helped her in doing that job, selling pineapple and oranges in the market, and towing load from one town to another to go and sell.
Recognizing the growing need for crops to sell, Emmanuel's community has begun a small oil palm nursery.
People here, they eat palm oil. Over 400 hectares of land we have here. We can use some of it and then grow palm. It's going to take roughly 3.5 to 4 years to start bearing palm nuts like this. But the cash crop can be used as a guarantee. Even if I'm not alive, any of the family children in the future, they can point back to the palm tree and say, yes, this place of our father planted the palm here. It's very important in terms of land tenant security. We have some conflict with another neighboring village. They cross regional land boundary and come to our own area and try to create a new boundary. So it has been a long-standing land dispute. Our father fought that case so much, he was severely beaten. So today he's not recovering very well. I think that came from that beating. But it's a whole long story. Where is the brushing down? That on that side, right? On the other side?
Yes.
Okay. What is public land? What is customary land? People take advantage of what we call customary law and statutory law and marginalize. So it creates a lot of conflict. Sometimes in Liberia, land conflict will erupt very fast. But if you study the root causes of such a conflict, you'll know that some voices have been silent for a long time.
Because I believe that for us to know where we are and where we're going, it's better to know where we come from. I have gone back to the village where I came from. Our father, who is very old and approximately over 100 years now, asking him series of questions concerning the land, how we inherited the land, our people, where they came from, his father, his grandfather, where they came from. And one day he looked at me and said, "You will be the wisest of your brothers." And I asked him why. He asked me, "None of your brothers or even sister have ever asked me the questions you are asking me." I started working with the Land Commission. Right now, it's the basis of our work. It's geared towards helping the Land Commission to develop land policy. I focus on working with rural people in terms of sustainability, in terms of their livelihood, and that is pretty much tied to land.
At the same time, judiciary, there's a conflict in there that we need to think about.
There was a scholarship through USAID, but I did apply for that scholarship and I was accepted. I ended up at the University of Wisconsin to study masters in land-related area. The work I'm doing here, or my thesis, my master's thesis I'm doing right now, it is geared towards helping the Land Commission to develop land policy. That's the basis of our work.
While studying at the University of Wisconsin, Emmanuel meets Gregg Mitman, an environmental historian.
Emmanuel and I met by chance. I was heading to Liberia in the summer of 2012, and our graduate student coordinator put me in touch with him. He said, you know, we have a graduate student in the Nelson Institute who's from Liberia. And I said, that's fantastic. I'd love to meet him.
When I saw Gregg, everything just seemed to come together.
I was asked to serve as a scholar consultant on a film that was going to be made about the roots of international conservation and colonialism. They had footage of 3 different expeditions. One was of a 1926 Harvard expedition to Liberia. And I met Emmanuel, and then we watched the footage together.
I was just really overwhelmed when I saw it. This was my first time to see how life was in Liberia at that time.
Emmanuel was amazed to find that the 1926 Harvard expedition to Liberia passed close by his hometown, Gomu village.
Words are inadequate to express the time I saw the footage of the expedition.
The Harvard expedition was supported by Firestone Tire and Rubber Company, which in 1926 became the first major multinational company to be established in Liberia.
The expedition traveled the corridor from the Firestone area to Kakata, to Zenzu, to Banga, the heartland of Liberia. They saw road building, they captured that on camera. They saw historical important figures, the landscape at the time. They were able to capture all of those on camera.
The footage is important to Liberia, historically and in the contemporary term right now, because the footage gave a deeper understanding as to what we're dealing with today. It started way back.
I was so fortunate to have seen it and now taking it back to my country.
Emmanuel presents the footage at a community discussion group. The footage was taken in 1926, the same year that the Liberian government granted Firestone a 99-year lease for up to 1 million acres of land to establish a rubber plantation.
You see rubber trees. We were wondering why Firestone was, you know the story, that engulfed Firestone and the Liberian people.
You say that the agreement was for 99 years?
Yeah, 99 years.
The 99 agreement was revisited, was revised?
It was revisited in 2007. 26. It took operation in 1927.
In the footage, we see Firestone is clearing large amount of land, and today we see that land is being cleared through foreign concession right now. Until I saw the footage to know that, oh, this place was a forest before, and people were living here.
For me, I don't want to blame the corporation. Firestone Rubber Plantation is running business. All the blame will go to the national government who represent the people. It is your own responsibility as a government to make them to provide such a basic need
those white guys at the time were dehumanized in the sense that when it comes to their wages.
The essence of business is the maximum profit.
Are these guys working in the interest of Liberians, or they working in the interest of the West?
Liberia! It's your day! It's time to party! This is real fame! Doing it for y'all! I am proud to be a Liberian, and I don't care what anybody will say. I will jump and sing and shout hooray, 'cause today is our Independence Day. Liberia, we are free.
These few days I've been trying to drive around, and then I seen schools, I seen hospital. I saw some changes taking place. But having come across this historical material, I just wonder, what became of the people that were living here when the Concession was signed? They are no longer here because you don't see those traditional communities here.
Emmanuel visits a Bassa community that was relocated when the Firestone concession agreement was reached. Their customary rights were ignored in the granting of the lease to Firestone.
Careful, I blow the careful about behind you. When I buy one, I'm a 40 pen. Who I pay for you?
This was a cultural performance in the Basel town.
Yeah, you can have it. It's okay. Oye, you are again. You're far again. Pin your way, pin okay, G, okay, what I can say on Chakra. So, Woko, Farungo, Swimbo, Gabri, Woko, Bosso, and Woko, Blogger, the Chamber, Woko, Pilot, Woko, Bopoga. I thought you were saying, okay. You have brought a tat and bravos in me, yes, it's so. Quý xã kia, biết là bao giờ, phát triển là bao giờ đi, cả mà xưa biết kia, ngoài là ra, cái quá trình nghe vậy, quá quý nào giàu, quý giàu ngu.
We can turn to the footage and see that land concession, movement of people from one place to another. Is there something that we can learn from that? 75 years ago, the common mode of travel at the time was by foot and also by the river. Because in the expedition, we see that the expeditionists themselves riding the boat on the Do River. In the footage, you see them on the Do going up the Firestone when the plantation gets started. The dude was very important because it was used by Firestone for transportation. No motor road, so they used boat to carry goods and people to the plantation. As time went by, motor roads were created.
Road construction was undertaken to facilitate the smooth operation of government. We needed a road, a wider road where soldiers, district commissioners, and others will have easy traffic, as opposed to the path passing here and there crooked.
This road building, I'm told, this is somewhere in Bon County, the part of Bon County I'm from. I showed to my father, and he was trying to see the area that he was building the road, whether this footage was captured there, and he wanted to identify himself.
They know that I get it. You prepare that.
Oh, okay.
Young, he prepare. He prepare.
I prepare.
Muna we he break up there.
I prepare. June. Who prepare June?
June, I prepare.
Ah, what about June? Hena kawana gawa pawo wa bara o go bo go mai go bo ke go bu mai bo go bu mai ja go wa ya bo ni je wa abele apa o go wo bu ya ba ku ga.
When I travel, asking people to Tapeta, to Banga, to Swakoko, and other places, I have never been told that people went to work on the road voluntarily. I have been told people were forced to go and work. But then you have people trying to develop their nation, whether it was done by coercion or not, but what I see that road was being built.
As a road comes, then traders follow the road. As the road moves, schools follow the road. As the road moves, hospitals, clinics follow the road. This was one of the positive impact.
The emerging road network, built by the Liberian government with the aid of forced labor, enabled Firestone to more easily recruit workers.
Kuka tensenga for day.
Tensen for day.
Oi, ngamu ya tutono.
Ikabuga yellow fast.
Kwa ya wonga kwa ya gwi me ma, kulu fi to na ba. Ya kwa ya gwi me ma. Kuka du po fa tu.
So na po ka fast.
Kwa kuno ngai dei. Kwa kulu bo kwa bu nai pu. Ya bo, green be ba mana ka. Green ga ba? Bữa cá rô thì rủ quay đi đủ qua lá hôm mà phải đến á.
So neng rồi cũng có mà mấy mày là được.
Firestone was the first major foreign investment in Liberia and ushered in many regards, the beginning of our open door policy.
Throughout the 20th century, development was increasingly tied to foreign investment. Many Liberians found their land rights eroding.
The system of acquisition of land over the years has favored the elites, be they traditional elites or be they American-Liberian elites. Many of these individuals acquiring large tracts of land in many communities, especially in those areas that we call the rubber belt, your Kakata to Banga area. All along the major highway are rubber farms. Firestone's effect on us has been tremendous. Over the years, communities have sprung up in all of those areas. But because The land has already been deeded to these large landholders who have these rubber farms. There's no security or tenure for them.
For some reason or the other, those who were directing the affairs of the state from the beginning argued or maintained that they had a divine right to rule, which of course many said it was not so. So as we all know, or we should know, whenever you are denied participation, whenever you are denied what rightly belongs to you, you don't sit down and sing your country's national anthem, you don't sing hallelujah, you take a tactical retreat, and at some point in time, you strike.
Fast word to my men in boots. No retreat. Last words to the fallen troops. Rest in peace. Pour some liquor for my niggas deceased.
When there's gun firing and people are running for their lives, you don't have time for vehicles, you don't have time for houses that you have built. Everyone is trying to secure their lives somewhere else.
The war had many impacts, many impacts. It's hard to describe, but it changed the society upside down, in and out. Many good persons were killed, many are in exile.
The war affected every fabric of the Liberian society, including the knowledge that existed.
Historical records were destroyed.
Archives were burned. The museums were looted.
Even the oral history got destroyed because most of the oral historians were killed. So you have a country basically that is youthful without knowledge of their past.
If I had to describe my identity, I would like to describe myself as a Liberian. I don't know anything about my background because I was born. Yeah, we never stay alone in my hometown, and then we came to Morville, so I don't really know anything about my background. I don't even know how to speak the dialect. I don't know anything about it.
There's a gap between the generation of myself and the older generation, a gap between how Liberia was won before the war and how it is today. That's one of the effects of the war. If you kill the culture, to me, you kill the nation.
This building was in the middle of a fighting zone because the Lutheran church that a lot of people are massacred in is about 2 blocks down. So this was a heavy fighting area throughout the war. The war destroyed all types of records here. Historical acts that were passed, historical deeds from way back. The absence of records, they have escalated the conflict over there. Land ownership. A lot of people got displaced. They had to give up where they were living, and when they came back, of course, the new occupants of the land, they didn't want to move easily. So that created another new set of problems, which we are grappling with along with the Land Commission and other land agencies, like Land and Mines and all of that. In the urban areas, like places surrounding Monrovia, it's intense.
More than a decade after the war ended, temporary communities with uncertain land rights remain.
We displaced. This is my compound.
Just living there?
Yes.
One such community, West Point, is rapidly eroding into the ocean.
One of the house, it break down. This is my bedroom. It break down.
Without deeds, communities live under constant threats of demolition and displacement.
Be careful!
Be careful. Okay, do the other one in the back.
Emmanuel and Vivian's 24th Street community in Monrovia is marked for demolition.
We are not feeling quite safe here now because the government have been warning us that the whole place will be demolished and then they will have to remove everyone from here. They mark all of the houses that they will be destroying. We are not safe here.
It's a volatile situation, not potential. If it's a volatile situation, as long as we begin to address those issues, it will not be such a time bomb. But if we leave them undone, it will explode. These safes was found a few weeks ago. We brought them here and we had them opened. These safes have been closed, I think, since the 70s. I was completely taken aback and overwhelmed by what I saw. Our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, the original land, the first treaties between the indigenous population and the settler population, all of that was visible right in front of our eyes. I felt the day when we saw the documents from India that the war was completely over. The footage plus the National History Project plus the discovery of these documents from this safe, it's like Liberia is really fulfilling its second chance as a nation. It's bringing everything together.
The Harvard expedition footage has a lot of good things in it in terms of cultural preservation, but when you look deep and deeper, sometimes you also see such a material is sensitive. That's why I've been very cautious about why it is important that it come back to Liberia. It belongs to us. We should bring it back, but we should yet be really cautious about how we release it because we want it to help. We don't want it to serve as an instrument of division and an instrument to divide people instead of bringing people together.
Gregg and Emmanuel meet with the National Archive Agency to discuss the best way to give the public access to the Harvard footage.
I saw this as an opportunity to really hear from everyone at the table of how they would like to see people interact with the footage. When Emmanuel was traveling with some of the footage, people would add their own stories and histories to that, some of which we've been documenting over the past year as we've gone out filming. Every place we've gone, people have said, I want a copy of that, I want a copy of that footage.
We all around this table got very strong interest in that footage. How can we use our own access to information law to see how we can make it public, for the public to come and gain access to it? We haven't gotten on our feet yet since the war, and we're working towards that to become a national archive once again. Yeah. That's the main problem, to be able to properly take care of what you're bringing to us that is so valuable to us here. We haven't recorded much of our history and life, much less on film. If it can be shown on TV for everybody to see what Liberia looked like in 1926, it would be good. Everybody, one way or the other, will be touched by that.
In recent years, Liberians have worked hard at reconciliation with each other, but unreformed land policies remain a threat to Liberia becoming a fully inclusive nation. In the years since the war ended, the government has accelerated grants of Liberia's land to agricultural, logging, and mining concessions. This amounts to around 25% of Liberia's total land mass.
This is one of the largest concession agreements operating in the country right now. They are planting oil palm and rubber.
when I grew up, this is our cultural land. We got a place where we can fish and get fish to eat. We got a place to make farm, to not bake anybody. So we never used to baking. We make our own farm, make farina, cassava, fufu, everything here. We don't have no space there for that any longer. I used to make farm here to send my son to school. Out of high school, going to college. He was sponsored by the farm, not by St. Darby. I was sponsored by farm, not by St. Darby. But how can we send your children to school now? We don't have no land. The government is not talking anything about it. What the people eat here? Cassava leaves, no fish, no nothing. Everything we have there is gone. St. Darby told us they were going to employ people with good salary. But to our surprise, in fact, to employ you was very difficult. Right now, the only benefit that our people depend on our rest, but not money. As I speak to you, I'm from eating dry rice because of no fish. But before, when I come here, my grandma used to go in the water and bring fish. No fish, no water, no swamp, no nothing.
When they do large-scale clearance in areas where there are human settlements, the way they've done it up to now is that there is no land area left for the villagers to be able to conduct their traditional livelihood activities. So when you remove people from that situation and force them into a formal employment that restricts all the other activities, then you have to really question the economic sense of all of that. I think it's a lack of appreciation or understanding of how the local economy works.
Silas heads to the south of Liberia, where a new land concession is leading to land disputes. Golden Verulium, a foreign palm oil company, has been granted a concession of community land, and in return they employ as many local people as possible. This replaces the community's traditional means of making a living, forcing them into a cash economy.
In the areas in which we are providing jobs, I think on average we can employ about 20% of the population. So the majority of people in the area will still not have a job. We're trying to give a reasonable allocation of jobs to those people who've given up land, those people who come from the area, those households where you're trying to make sure there's an equitable distribution of jobs. When we move into a new area, what we try to do is we try to prioritise people who have given up land that they have been farming, because they're obviously losing their economic livelihoods, and we say we will give you priority for jobs. We then try to identify people who actually live in the communities who have offered their land, and we will give them jobs because it's their community land, and then we will work from there. Here, there's a very strong desire for development, but if you want development, a lot of development depends upon funders and financiers knowing who owns what. And at the moment in Liberia, that's very difficult.
Liberia is trying to identify the many different criteria for community land claims. Old Weir Town was abandoned during the war years. Its inhabitants moved to Jacksonville, but they still see it as their land.
This is Old Weir Town. As you see here, these are coconut trees that we have planted. These are cocoa trees. Behind you there, they are orange trees. We got guava trees and all here. So actually this is our old town.
Old towns don't constitute ownership rights, as far as I am aware. If a town is abandoned, it's respected by us for its cultural significance, but the fact it's abandoned and people from that town may once have farmed land around it does not mean that they necessarily have any current community land rights there.
In Jacksonville, the Sustainable Development Institute takes the first step towards reconciling these land disputes by organizing focus groups and a consensus process to identify the rightful members of the community.
I am part of the team that trying to bring the community together, to talk together. My approach is not to hold any... These communities are trying to organize themselves to go through a formal process of documenting their customary ownership of the land, the domain over which they've been exercising control. Hopefully this process will lead to the generation of knowledge that will be feeding into the whole discussion about land reform in Liberia.
Once community self-identification is completed, SDI facilitates mapping the boundaries of the land. Silas visits one such community who are mapping their land within a logging concession.
They are going to start a process that might lead to them actually acquiring some documentation or title to the land. It's just amazing for them, and I think they are just expressing that happiness. And now they are breaking up into groups. The women will do a special map for the community. The elders will do one map, and then we bring all of that together in the group. In the past, successive governments will give out logging concessions without as much as any prior information to the communities. They will wake up in the morning and see loggers roll into the villages with bulldozers and chainsaws and simply stop by the chief and say, hey, we're here because we got a concession from the state. What we are now pushing for is making sure that decisions about forests actually start with the communities themselves.
When the concession comes without some dialogue with the communities, it creates frictions between leadership in the community and the community itself. Youth, for example, are unhappy with agreements that are made without their consultation. And in that respect, the youth tend to disrespect decisions made by the community leaders, create tension in the community, so people then take individual actions. So you can see in the case of Firestone, you saw a community you did not see the process of transformation, but in our case, we are seeing how the transformation is taking place. What's happening now moving forward, it got me thinking about how to balance between a people, a culture, and a desire for change.
A politically engaged and vocal generation is on the rise. Across Liberia, land issues increasingly dominate discussions, and it is the youth who have the loudest voice.
Why? We gave you a place, then you drove off. No, they gave we gave you place.
People want a different area.
We integrate ourselves with you guys. You don't have place of your own.
15 years, what they can eat. We have place of our own.
Well, it's still tribe to have. Which tribe you come from? Let me tell you, they will give you stories.
And they have.
Why you people are nurturing another time bomb?
Land issue in Liberia is very sensitive today because you can see that the youth are in conflict with the older people over land. You can see that women rights are not as protected as men. You can see that the state having control over the land, even though people live on it. It's a complex issue.
The Land Right Acts that we've been working on, it gives rights to everybody. Every Liberian should have equal opportunity to access a land and to own land.
We've never had a land policy in Liberia, so we primarily are aimed at developing a land policy and developing appropriate laws and regulations for enforcement of that land policy.
In 2014, before the government could approve a new land rights policy, Ebola struck Liberia.
The deadly Ebola virus has now spread to 8 counties. It now poses serious risks to the health, safety, security, and welfare of our nation. I instructed all non-essential government staff to stay home for 30 days, ordered the closure of schools, and authorized the fumigation of all public buildings. We have shut down markets in affected areas and have restricted movements in others.
Sam Darby wound down their operations while the Ebola virus spread.
So when the dry issue come, people are somehow afraid. So the town itself put themselves under quarantine. Because looking at it, if I don't do it, I may be affected with the virus tomorrow. But then let ourselves take the initiative.
2%, 3% die in the other town, or 4% die in the other house. When it be happening like that, we were just sitting down here, we can't go nowhere. Right here, it takes me almost 3 months. I've never been in Bamaki.
On the issue of the food, people survive on the food that the workers get from Sam Darby. Nobody is here doing any farm work.
Also help work, we are working in Sam Darby. But if we are not working there, it will be difficult. Because if we are business happy, all the things price go up. Even transportation, copper rate. Now in the surrounding, you can find copper rate for $30, $50.
The situation escalated when roadblocks, curfews, and quarantines severed farm-to-market networks.
For all to pass through here to go in, not easy to get food. Our children are dying with hunger. Hunger for call, so they fall for call. How would they now?
Those who were growing their own food were better able to isolate themselves from the crisis, despite the risk of coming into contact with others while harvesting.
Thank God, for me I was lucky. My farm helped me. While people buying rest, I didn't buy rest. Yeah. So up to now, I seen rest, my family, myself, living on.
After the Ebola crisis is over, the memory of the disease will remain. It will remain in the human population, it will remain on the landscape in terms of hunger, in terms of food security, in terms of the lives that are lost in the process. The memory is going to continue.
In the wake of Ebola, there's a renewed urgency to clarify land rights so land can be used to bring the nation back from widespread food insecurity. As the Ebola crisis subsides, a legislative hearing, which includes an opportunity for public testimony, is held to discuss the proposed land rights bill.
Is it true? Nothing but the truth. Nothing but the truth. So help me with God. So help me with God. All right, Chairman. The invitees are now duly qualified for this hearing, sir.
We set up a land commission because there was a problem on land issue. And let's pass the law. The Liberian people are depending on you. We are tired of our people dying over land conflicts. Thank you.
When you talk about life, you talk about land. Without the land, we cannot make it. Please pass the act. I have a native background, and I'm speaking for the native women in the DWO counties.
I'd like to look at this policy and the law as a wealth creation strategy. Because for once now you're giving land which is value upon which investments can be made. You're actually giving individuals within your community the right to empower themselves through owning land.
Honorable Zanzan Kawa gave me a message to this valley to deliver that whatsoever will be saying about the land, it must be the real truth. What we be saying here, we should go by it. What we be saying here, we should put it to practice. Not only we must say it, but we must do it.
If this law is passed, this is going to be the very first time in the 168-year history of this country that customary people will own their land without interfering from the government, from concessionaire, from anybody. This will be the first time. In my own context, like the village I'm from, I would consider myself to be a customary man because even the land in our village, I cannot hold the ownership to it. I cannot say, it's for me. It's for us, not me.
There's a man over here.
We're coming down.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, well, yeah.
oh man.
We're going in time for that. We're coming down. My own land, my family land, it belongs to all of us, brothers, and to a certain degree, sisters, but with a certain degree of right. How do you combine that with individual land, titling, individual deed, possession? This is my father's grave. I think his death is saddening me. He's a source of inspiration. He lived his life. He lived for over 100 years, so it was time for him to go. So I can come back to him, I can ask for blessing, and I can celebrate with him, with his ancestors. When the expedition moved through this area, yeah, I think my father would have been, at the time, 16 years old. I think he had a sense of some of the things they captured on camera when he first looked at the footage because it brought the memory to him live. I think the footage connects us with this land. It connects us with our past so much. Preserving the environment, it has to do with also preserving who we are and where we come from, and that's basically related to our culture. If I lost this land, it's going to be not only loss of the land itself, it's going to be loss of people and their history. It's going to be loss of culture and memory. It's going to be loss of value and heritage, and so loss of everything.